this is going to be an important part of the marketing plan. It's going to be the competitive analysis, and I'm going to give you two kinds of ways you can sort of approach this section. So the first section is here. I'm going to give you two competitors that I have. So because I'm positioning myself as a sort of like a business expert who's done it before, I'm going to give two examples of how two friends of mine whose products I'm going to endorse right now just because they are my friends and they have great products. Nick Loper from the site hustlenation.com. He has a great podcast for entrepreneurs. Check him out. And John Dumas has a great Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, which you should also check out. They both have great podcasts, and they both position themselves as business experts. And here's how. So they're kind of positioning themselves exactly like me, right? Business experts. So how would I do competitive analysis? And if you have a similar situation, think about how you would do a competitive analysis. Well, for me, I mostly focused on different platforms. So whereas they focused on podcasting, I focused on YouTube. We all have some books. For me, it's less of a factor. I know Nick focuses on books a lot, so people will go to him for books. Me, on the other hand, I have apps, so people come to me for apps. I focus on Udemy very heavily, whereas Nick and John focus. Nick has only a few courses on Udemy, and John has courses that he sells on his own to his own audience. So even though we compete on this kind of a brand of like, a business expert who can help you plan, start, and grow your business, I'm actually on mostly very different platforms, or at least where our platforms overlap, they don't overlap very much. Now, what about my competitive analysis on individual platforms, right? So people who I don't know, so like on Amazon, how are my business books better or different than other thousands and millions of other books, right? So if you have a product, how is your product? If you sell it on your own website or on Amazon, how is it different or better than the other millions of other competitive products? So here are a few examples that maybe you can use from my own competitive analysis here. So my books are in very competitive niches, right? And you should always try to determine the level of competition. In Amazon, things are very competitive. Some of the best business experts in the world have a book on starting a business and marketing, so I'm competing against literally the best in the world. The way I stand out and differentiate myself is I find niches. For example, my mobile apps book. That book is probably one of the better, if not the best book on the mobile app business, and it's actually my more successful book. So that book, I kind of focused on a niche, right? I didn't go. Two of my books, they do focus on the big, how to start a business, how to market a business, but that is where they actually ran into problems because it was very hard to compete against the gigantic people who promote their books on TV and things like that, like every day, right? Hard for me to compete with those guys. But I was able to compete in a niche. On Udemy, I compete in a different way. On Udemy, what I did is I created a whole suite of courses that cover just about every business topic. I partnered with a lawyer to create legal courses. I partnered with a branding expert to create branding courses. I created many courses on starting and promoting a business in every kind of way, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, things like that. And many of them I partnered with experts who either led the expertise or we kind of filled in each other's expertise. So if I had some things I wasn't sure about, that other person sort of gave, more lectures on topics that I didn't know and vice versa. On mobile apps, actually, I started early and I just came out of the gate and I outcompeted most of the other apps that compete on, how to start a business planning. For the most part, my apps remain some of the best apps and very, very helpful. They're not very well designed because, I did the design, but they are very, very helpful. And entrepreneurs tell me all the time who use the apps. So that's how I compete and actually win on the mobile apps. And in coaching, I don't really compete against other coaches because that also would be a little bit of a cluttered space. But my approach is to build trust through my other channels, and people who want even more like one-on-one experience, they just contact me after they've had experience with my other products, my YouTube channel, my Udemy, anything. And so that way, I avoid competing in the crowded places where coaching is promoted, and I develop my own sales funnels for that. So hopefully that gives you some sense of how to understand who your competition is and how to outcompete or position yourself differently on every kind of platform that there is. And I gave a few very, very different examples here, so you got a lot to go on.